Guys, today, the Caitlin Clark stimulus package just got approved by Congress today. It's fitting that last time a new CBA deal was reached.
In the complex, multi-billion-dollar world of global sports business, one of the most powerful illusions a labor union can project is the idea of collective corporate value, that the entire workforce equally generated a financial windfall. When major revenue milestones are reached, unions often step forward to claim that shared dedication and teamwork produce a success. But when you look beyond media narratives and press releases and instead study the financial data, a harsher reality tends to appear. In specialized entertainment industries, a small fraction of talent typically drives the overwhelming majority of revenue. That dynamic is now central to debate surrounding the Women's National Basketball Association and its Players Association, which is celebrating a major revenue-sharing milestone. Critics argue that this financial surge was not the result of broad, organic league-wide growth, but rather the impact of a rare, unpredictable phenomenon, a generational star whose arrival dramatically shifted market demand. To understand the scale of the current controversy, it's essential to revisit the league's 2020 collective bargaining agreement. That deal included a revenue-sharing mechanism allowing players to receive 50% of incremental revenue, but only if the league surpassed a specific financial benchmark. That benchmark was tied to 2019 revenue and required a compounded 20% growth rate each year thereafter. For several years, reaching that target appeared mathematically unrealistic. The league fell short, citing pandemic disruptions, marketing challenges, and television scheduling issues. Financial analysts widely viewed the clause as theoretical, unlikely to ever be triggered. However, the economic landscape shifted dramatically with the arrival of a transformational talent in Indianapolis, most notably with the entry of Caitlin Clark to the Indiana Fever. Her unprecedented popularity, media draw, and commercial appeal rapidly altered revenue projections, turning what once seemed impossible into reality. Now, as the revenue-sharing trigger activates, the debate centers on whether this milestone reflects collective league growth or the extraordinary market impact of a single generational star.
Is upon us. The WNBA generated enough revenue in 2025 to trigger revenue sharing with players for the first time.
For the first time in its 28-year history, the Women's National Basketball Association generated enough revenue in 2025 to trigger the long-discussed revenue-sharing benchmark. An unprecedented $8 million pool is now set to be distributed among players across the league's 13 rosters. The Players Association quickly celebrated the milestone, framing the payout as clear proof of the collective value the workforce brings to the league. They are using this moment to strengthen their position ahead of the 2026 collective bargaining negotiations, where they are pushing for a 27.5% share of gross revenue. Their message to ownership is direct. The league has finally reached its financial targets, and players believe they deserve a significantly larger piece of the pie. However, critics argue that the $8 million revenue-sharing pool represents only a portion of the broader financial shift happening behind the scenes. The most striking development lies in group licensing revenue, the highly lucrative market covering jersey sales, licensed apparel, trading cards, and video game likeness rights. Historically, group licensing payouts in the WNBA have been minimal to the point of insignificance. Yet over the past year, licensing revenue has experienced a dramatic surge that defies traditional sports marketing patterns. The magnitude of that spike raises deeper questions about what is truly driving the new wealth entering the system, and what it ultimately means to the players now receiving those distribution checks.
From 2016 to 2019, they dispersed $280,000. Nobody was buying jerseys, trading cards, merchandise, none at all. None whatsoever. Then from 2020 to 2025, now we're splitting up.
Between 2016 and 2019, the total amount of group licensing revenue distributed by the Players Union in the Women's National Basketball Association was just $280,000 over 4 years, an amount that underscored how limited consumer demand for league merchandise had been. Jersey sales, trading cards, and licensed apparel generated minimal market traction during that period. Fast forward to the present, and the union has announced a staggering $9.25 million in group licensing revenue to be distributed among players, an extraordinary surge representing more than a 3,200% increase. The overwhelming majority of that revenue was generated within the last calendar year alone. Critics argue, however, that this dramatic spike was not the result of balanced demand across all rosters. Instead, they point to the unprecedented commercial momentum surrounding Caitlin Clark, from jersey sales to Panini trading cards and officially licensed merchandise, as the primary engine behind the surge. Under the structure of the union's group licensing agreement, revenue generated from collectively licensed products is pooled and distributed broadly rather than allocated strictly by individual sales performance. Supporters describe this as a protective mechanism designed to ensure stability and fairness across all roster tiers, while critics contend it amounts to a redistribution model that spreads the financial impact of a single breakout star across the entire league.
Fences. Quote, "We've grown as a union and put our name, image, and likeness into a collective package." Anneka Ogwumike says, "The union exists for us to be able to represent all players, so I think it's a great way for all players to be able to share."
Under the group licensing structure in the Women's National Basketball Association, players place their name, image, and likeness into a collective pool, allowing revenue from licensed merchandise to be shared broadly rather than allocated strictly by individual sales. Supporters view this as a solidarity-based model designed to stabilize incomes across the league. But critics argue it resembles a form of internal wealth redistribution within an otherwise hyper-capitalist sports marketplace. The recently announced $9 million-plus licensing pool is expected to be divided among more than 250 individuals, including not only active 2025 roster players, but also some former and released players, depending on eligibility rules. That means certain individuals who are no longer active in the league could still receive substantial payments tied to merchandise sales generated during this surge. Much of the public debate centers on the unprecedented commercial impact of Caitlin Clark, whose jersey sales, trading cards, and licensed products have driven a dramatic spike in consumer demand, particularly in markets like Iowa and Indiana. Union leadership frames the payout as sharing in the growth and a collective triumph, while critics argue it highlights a disconnect between individual star power and league-wide compensation structures. This tension is intensifying ahead of the 2026 collective bargaining negotiations, with some analysts warning that a lockout is possible if both sides fail to align on revenue distribution. Players point to the newly triggered $8 million revenue-sharing pool and the licensing windfall as evidence of rising league value and leverage for a new financial framework. Ownership groups, however, rely on detailed internal data analytics to evaluate exactly where revenue growth originated. That perspective was underscored by comments from Joe Tsai, the billionaire co-founder of Alibaba Group and owner of the New York Liberty, who publicly emphasized the measurable impact that a single transformative star can have on league economics. His remarks reinforced the broader debate, whether the recent financial surge represents sustainable collective growth or the outsized multiplier effect of one generational talent reshaping the marketplace.